Very much. We'll move to the Alberta Muslim Public Affairs Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for having us. My name is Faisal Khan Suri. I'm the president of the Alberta Muslim Public Affairs Council, AMPAC. I'm joined here with my colleague, VP of Outreach, Mohammed Hussain. To state it quite mildly, online hate influences real-life hate. To be quite blunt about this, online hate is an actually enabler, a precursor, and a deep contributor to not just real-life hate, but to murder. I think we've seen a lot of recent tragedies that have been happening across the world. In January 2017, in Quebec City, mosque killer Alexandre Bissonnette gunned down 6 Muslim men in execution style, where he came into the mosque with 2 guns and fired more than 800 rounds. The evidence from Bissonnette's computer showed he repeatedly sought content about anti-immigrant, alt-right, and conservative commentators, mass murderers, U.S. President Donald Trump, and about the arrival of Muslims, immigrants within Quebec. In October 2018, white nationalist Robert Bowers murdered 11 people and injured 7 more at the shooting inside the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. An attack, again, that appears to have been motivated by anti-Semitism, inspired by his extensive involvement in white supremacy and alt-right online networks. In March 2019, a lone gunman armed with semi-automatic weapons burst into the mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand. This white nationalist, which was a gruesome terrorist attack, was broadcasted live on Facebook and Twitter, and 51 worshippers were killed. I think there's so many more examples that we can provide that show the accessibility of online hate and how it's affecting the real-life hate that we're witnessing today. I think it's absolutely critical, if not fundamental, to embark on such studies and to look into this issue a lot further with a deep thought process in place. Online hate is a key factor in enforcing hate in all forms: Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, radicalization, violence, extremism, and potentially death. This is why we must take immediate action to work on prevention, monitoring, and enforcement. AMPAC today, in order to combat the online hate, we come out with 3 recommendations. Number 1, employing artificial intelligence on online materials to identify any form of hate speech. Number 2, reopening the Canadian Human Rights Act for a comprehensive review. And number 3, transparency and accountability for social media platforms. If you can allow me to further sort of delve into a little bit further into recommendation number 1 here. So employing artificial intelligence on online materials to identify any form of speech. Right-wing extremist groups are using social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter to create and promote their groups, share messages, assemble people, and a lot more. The question is, how can you remove their access, block IP addresses, or even discover these types of groups? While there are some tools being used today, such as text analysis and to combat online hate, these groups are becoming much more smarter, and they're using images like JPEGs to help deter that monitoring of online hate. While we're happy to see that the new digital charter incorporates elements of an approach that involves industry, we believe that the government itself must fund innovative technological solutions to track online hate and that aid in developing artificial intelligence that can combat it. The AI technology needs to be comprehensive so as to encompass text analysis, languages, and cover all forms of social media that are there to facilitate online hate. We believe that there is spaces in Canada, especially within Alberta, to build that to that capacity. For the second recommendation that we're making, reopening the Canadian Human Rights Act for a comprehensive review. I think this is one that is quite near and dear to our hearts. The moment of freedom of speech or freedom of expression puts another group, organization, or an individual in any form of danger, it can no longer be justified as freedom of speech or expression. This is now freedom of hate, which has no place in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, nor in any pluralistic society that we live in. It's been far too long since the Canadian Human Rights Act has been revisited. Keep in mind the following. Over the last few years, hate has led to the murder of innocent civilians, and the importance of reviewing how online access and other mediums have been used to propel such hate and extremist perceptions. AMPAC recommends not simply revisiting and reviving Section 13, but reviewing the Canadian Human Rights Act in its entirety. The review itself needs to consider facts on the rise of Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, xenophobia, and all other forms of hate. Questions need to be asked in terms of what determines hate, how can we bring enforcement into the picture, but with respect to the Charter of Rights and Freedom. As part of our third recommendation that we had talked about was the transparency and accountability for social media platforms. While we're pleased with the signing of the digital charter, we think there's a lot more to be done in terms of regulating social media companies. We recognize that social media platforms have been actually trying to curtail hate speech through reporting options, but there's a lack of accountability of what follows that reporting, which in turn then minimizes any sort of enforcement. Social media platforms such as Facebook or Twitter and YouTube must be held accountable for by government authorities in reporting the data and any follow-up measures. We're quite aware of the challenges that such regulations can bring to the freedom of expression related to this recommendation, but we believe in a statement that the New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern had addressed. Her persistence to control the amplification of online hate is not about curbing freedom of expression. If I might quote some of her words, the right does not include the freedom to broadcast mass murder. This is not about undermining or limiting freedom of speech. It is about these companies and how they operate. Working alongside social media companies, holding them accountable, imposing some form of financial repercussions or other necessary measures is part of this recommendation. We hope to see requirement of online platforms to be transparent in the reporting and come to light with this initiative. I think in the end, if I go back to the key factors that are priorities for us, is to look at prevention, monitoring, and enforcement. Today, the recommendations that we've talked about to implement a comprehensive artificial intelligence tool that spans across major social media platforms, language, text image analysis, reopening the Canadian Human Rights Act for an extensive review, reviving Section 13 again, and holding social media platforms accountable for sharing data are just the initial steps that we believe that can help to curb online hate. With a 600% increase in the amount of intolerant hate speech on social media posts from November 2015 to November 2016, I can only fathom or try to understand where those stats are today. Additionally, with the clear evidence of online hate inflicting the horrific killing of innocent lives and people, there is absolutely no greater time than the present to action immediate government legislative change. We cannot allow any hate to inflate any further. We most certainly cannot allow any more lives to be taken. I'd like to end this with an echo statements of our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Canadians expect us to keep them safe, whether it's in real life or online. Thank you so much.
And we'll now move to questions. Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Mr. Surrey, I take great umbrage with your defamatory comments to try to link conservatism with violent and extremist attacks. They have no foundation, they're defamatory, and they diminish your credibility as a witness. And let me, Mr. Chair, read into the record the statement of Brenton Tarrant, who is responsible for the Christchurch massacre. He left a 74-page manifesto in which he stated, "Conservatism is corporatism in disguise. I want no part of it. The nation with the closest political and social values to my own is the People's Republic of China," close quote. And I certainly wouldn't attempt to link Bernie Sanders to the individual who shot up Republican members of Congress and nearly fatally killed Congressman Scalise. So you should be ashamed. Now, with respect,
at our committee. I do not. I have this speech in front of me, Mr. Chair, and there's nothing linking conservatism to that movement. If alt-right is limited to conservatism, that's conservatives' issue.
He said conservatism and conservative commentators. Those are his.
Guys.
Mr. Chair, you cannot have a member of this committee calling for witnesses to be ashamed. That's unacceptable.
Again, I certainly don't agree. Okay. Guys, what I will do is I'm going to allow Mr. Surrey to respond. I certainly don't agree with the comments made, but at the same point in time, this is Mr. Cooper's time.
Well, I will
take unfair to put Mr. Surrey in that position. That is unfair.
I challenge the chair.
To put Mr. Surrey in a position.
I challenge the ruling of the chair.
To have to defend himself in front of this.
I challenge the ruling of the chair.
Again, I think, guys.
You can't put Mr. Surrey in that position.
There's no ruling
That's
here
unfair.
right now. right? Because there's nothing to challenge. I haven't made a ruling. I think the comments, I didn't agree with the comments made by Mr. Cooper. I'm sure Mr. Surrey doesn't agree with the comments, and I see that all the other members don't agree with the comments. All right? I think Mr. Surrey has a right also to respond if he wishes to respond.
I think that's unacceptable.
Rule the
You're
comments
putting
out
him
of
in a
order.
position of vulnerability to have to respond to these attacks. Quite frankly, that's unacceptable. He didn't come here today to defend himself. He came here to present on behalf of his organization.
I
It is
understand.
unfair, Mr. Chair. If you attempt to try to have him respond and legitimize what has been said, then I will call for us to go into camera immediately, and I think I'll have support from my colleagues.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a question of legitimizing it at all. I think, again, members have their time to make their comments. I don't agree with Mr. Cooper's comments, but this is part of his time. I am going to ask, and I will give time for Mr. Surrey to respond.
Mr. Chair, I move to go
Mr.
into
Chair,
camera.
Provided really provides little comfort. You are saying that a member can say anything they like to say.
Well,
And that is completely
what-
unacceptable.
well,
I put a motion on the floor that we go in camera, please, to have this conversation, because I'm not comfortable putting our witnesses in this very difficult position to listen to this disagreement that we're having.
Seconded.
That's fair. There's a motion to go into camera. All those in favor? Okay, we're going to move into camera. So apologies to everyone. We're going to ask, we're just going to ask everyone who is not part of the committee to leave the room for a very brief period of time, and we will have you come back in as soon as possible. We apologize for taking away your time. It was important for the committee to discuss and deal with the issue. I'm going to give the floor back to Mr. Cooper.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and while I certainly find the comments made by Mr. Surrey to be deeply offensive and objectionable and vehemently disagree with them, I will withdraw saying that he should be ashamed. That was not unparliamentary, but I understand it made some other members of the committee uncomfortable, so in the spirit of moving forward, I withdraw those specific comments, but certainly not the rest of what I said. Now, Mr. Ben Lolo, you cited Section 318, you cited Section 319. What about Section 320.1?
I think I did cite that section.
So